everybody, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I will teach you all how to paint a landscape in Procreate with lots of texture. And if you want to paint alongside me, the reference photo, this beautiful reference photo by this wonderful artist, and the brushes that I will be using are all linked in the description box below if you want to follow along with me. And I also want to mention that I do not use a color palette. All the colors that I am using in today are directly color dropped from this reference photo. So just wanted to put that out there. So the first thing we're going to do is I have this photo. So again, if you're following along, you can just import that to Procreate. And then I have just a screen size canvas. So when you go to create a canvas, it gives you the option of different sizes. I just did the screen size of my iPad. So I'm going to just move this over to the left, just like that. And then I'm going to create another layer, and I'm going to get like a grayish black color, and I'm going to use my 6B pencil, and I'm going to use that as my sketch pencil. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to just create, just like eyeballing, we're just going to very loosely sketch out the composition. And this is a very simple composition, there's not a ton going on, so we're just going to get the basic shapes and just recreate that over here. So kind of like eyeballing it, we're just going to get that shape. Like that. And then again, just eyeballing, we're gonna see that the horizon line, we're gonna follow it over. We're gonna add that. And then the moon, somewhere up here. And then we're going to sketch out this rock formation. And it's very simple, so I'm gonna try to emphasize it and make it a little bit more exciting and just kind of stylize it a little bit more. Then I'm gonna go in and kind of add some of these, zoom in so you can see, some of these line details right over here. So we have something that kind of looks like that. There's also a little tree over here. You don't have to add it, but it's just a small little fun detail, some kind of a bush thing. And then I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. You do not have to draw them out. Like every single thing does not need to be in the exact same spot. You can kind of have creative freedom. So what I like to do when there's something like this, I kind of try to look for a pattern. So as you can see, if I zoom in here, let me actually make my brush lighter so you can see. You kind of look for it, there's kind of like, you know, that path of dirt going through that. There's also another shape over here, and then another one over here, and then there's a bunch of grass. And they're all kind of like randomly placed because nature is random. So I'm going to, kind of using that basic shape, going to go in. My husband and I just got a puppy, so if you hear any funny little noises, that is probably her. So using that, we're going to kind of sketch out that shape. And then where we left those spots, there are going to be bushes. So I'm just gonna kind of add in some random little tufts of grass. I kind of think of it as like, kind of like how you would draw a cloud where it's kind of flat on the bottom, and then goes up. But I'll kind of, you know, have it a flat-ish bottom, and then something like that for the grass. And this, again, this is just our sketch, so you know, nothing needs to look perfect. And then, I don't know if you can see it, but these right here, there's a few of these kind of bluer-ish colors that are a little bit more, I don't know, like the grass is kind of random, but these kind of have more of a shape to them, kind of like a cloud. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to kind of draw in that shape, roughly where they're placed. And then add another one there. And then one's kind of over here. Okay, cool. So we have our basic shape. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the opacity of our sketch layer down. And I'm going to, below the sketch layer, create another layer. And I'm going to take my Blackburn brush, which for those of you who've been on the channel before, you all know is my favorite. It's this beautiful, thick, very texturized brush. And today we want to put an emphasis on texture. So this is a great brush to start with. So with this layer below our sketch layer, I'm going to just color drop kind of like a mid-tone color of the piece, and going to just create that rectangle and then fill it in. And this is going to be our basic canvas, like our base for painting. Okay, let me make this shape a little bit better. And I don't like it to be a perfect rectangle. Like for me personally, I kind of like it to have a bit of character. So once I get my basic shape, I'll even go in and just add more texture to the outside of the brush. I'll go in. Okay. So we'll have something that looks like that. So then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tap on this layer and click Alpha Lock. So now anything we draw, oh, that is a very vibrant color, will stay within the border that we just created. So what I'm gonna do first is I'm going to add another layer on top of that, tap it and click Clipping Mask. And this will, now anything we draw in this separate layer, so it's in its own layer, will still stay within the border below. So it'll still stay within this border that we created. So this layer I'm going to have be the rock layer. So I'm going to go over here, I'm gonna color drop kind of a mid-ish tone color right there. I'm gonna use Blackburn, but I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. And I'm just gonna go in and I'm going to outline this shape and then fill it in. So now that we have that, I'm going to tap it and Alpha Lock. That way we can go in later and add shadows and highlights, and everything will stay within that. So then I'm gonna click another layer, and I'm going to put this below the rock shape that we just created. And this is going to be the foreground. So it's gonna be this whole section right here. So I'm just going to tap on this grassy color, like a mid-tone color again. And I'm going to just create that bottom foreground area, fill it in. Okay. And I'm going to tap that layer, and then we're going to Alpha Lock. Okay, so now we're gonna do another layer. This one doesn't really matter too much where you put it, but we're gonna do the moon. So I'm gonna zoom in, select a mid-tone color on the moon, and just create a circle. So we're going to create that circle shape, and then once you've created it, hold it, and it will make it a shape that you can adjust the size of. But as you can see, it's almost a perfect circle, but it's slightly like it's not perfect. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna tap with 2 fingers. Ooh. There we go. I don't know if you guys can see. Now it's a perfect circle. So I can create it the size I want to, fill it in, and there we go. Nice. Okay, so I'm also going to alpha lock that. And then, as you can see in this, most of the detail is in the foreground. So it's all that grass. So this bottom one, I'm actually going to change the color of it. It's gonna be more a reddish color because it's going to be the dirt, sandy dirt. It's gonna be that. And then we're gonna add the grasses on top. So we're gonna create another layer on top of that one. And this one will be where we add the grass. So now we're going to go into adding a bit more of texture. We're gonna add these shapes of our grass. So let me make sure that I have the right brush. I'm still on Blackburn, by the way. Everything so far has been Blackburn except for the sketch, which was a E6B pencil. Okay, so I'm going to just go in and very loosely add in my grass. And I know, I'm sure most of you know this, but if you take your Apple Pencil and you draw it up, straight up and down, it's going to be very thin. But once you angle it on its side, it's kind of like if you were to just take a regular like piece of charcoal, if you've ever drawn with those before, and you draw it up and down versus on its side, you get a thicker brush. So just wanted to point that out. So usually I draw a slight angle, so it's kind of somewhere in between. But I'm gonna go in and just kind of scribble in those shapes. I don't want you guys to think too much about getting everything perfect. We'll go in, we can erase if we need to, add in more detail later, but we really want the grasses to be, very chaotic and not too planned out. We want it to feel natural and organic like it is in real life. So I'm just gonna get that main shape in, and then I'm gonna go in now. Yeah, these. Ooh. Sorry if I'm shaking the camera. I'll try to be a little bit more steady. Okay, so now that we have our basic shape for all the grass down, I'm going to hop over to the rock formation and we're gonna add some shadows. So I'm gonna take darker tone, we're gonna go. I'm also gonna, actually real quick, take my sketch layer and I'm going to turn the opacity down even more. So I can still see the sketch layers, but they're not interfering with anything. And again, I'm just kind of scribbling. Kind of a controlled scribble, if you will. I'm going in with some darker colors. Okay, so now that we have some detail in for the rock, we're actually gonna hop back into our background. So we're gonna go to our first shape that we created, the rectangle, and we're on Blackburn still. I'm going to make my brush a lot bigger, and we're just gonna go through and color select and just make our way down as we paint. So we're gonna start up here with the blue, and kind of think of it like everything's like this shape. So when you paint, I don't want it to just be straight. I want it to have a little bit of a curve. You can obviously do whatever you want, but for me, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of paint with a little bit of a curve in my wrist. And then just make my way down and try to blend out a little bit, but keep your opacity at 100%. And now that we're kind of in the midway point, I'm now going to start taking my brush, and instead of going up and down, up this way, I'm going to blend this way. And then we're getting into the pretty pinks. Down here. Now we're kind of getting into like a grayishy purple and transitioning into kind of a blue tone, like this. So we should have something that looks like this right now. So now I'm gonna take my blend brush, still on, my blend brush is on Blackburn. The opacity is like a little less than 40%. And I'm just going to very lightly blend, but we're going to still blend it with that same motion that we painted everything in. Sometimes I even like to go in little circles, help blend things out a little bit, but I'm still moving my hand in that same way that we painted. Okay, so now that we have that really nice soft blend, I'm actually gonna go back with Blackburn, and we are going to paint, and you can turn your opacity down for this as well, but we're gonna go in and add some more colors because we want it to be a smooth blend, but we also still want to have some of those really nice brush strokes that we had before we blended it out. So I'm going in, just adding a few. I just changed my background to black. That way you can all see. It was kind of, my camera was having a hard time. Everything was just blown out. So I changed my background to black. That way you guys can see it all a little bit better. Now we're going to go into our grass. And remember how, actually let me brighten it. Ooh, that's not what we wanted. We're going to go and add more detail into our grass. But remember how we drew these shapes that were kind of like the grass that has a bit of a greenish blue tint? So we're gonna add those in, but those are actually gonna be a separate layer. So this layer that we had of our grass, we're gonna go and add another layer on top of it. Still on Blackburn, make sure your opacity is at 100%. I'm gonna make it a little bit of a smaller brush. We don't want it to be that blue. I'm gonna go in here, color drop that kind of grayishy green. There we go, that's a good color. So we're gonna go in over here and create those fun cloud shapes. And then there's another one over here. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take our eraser on Blackburn, make sure it's pretty small, and we're going to erase certain parts of it. Like that. This is definitely a stylized bush. So if you don't want to do that, you do not have to. Okay, so it should look something like that. And now we're going to go and alpha lock back down to our grass layer. This is where a lot of the detail and color is going to be. So I'm still on my Blackburn. Make sure it's a good size. And we're gonna go in and we're just going to carve out these chunks that we created. So as you can see in this reference photo, on the bottom, typically it's going to be darker, and then on the top of each chunk, it's going to get lighter. So we're going to color drop like a middish dark tone and just go in. Oop, that's very dark. Hold on, let me get a little bit of a lighter tone. Yeah, that's good. And we're going to go in. Well, actually, I think everything is a little bit too light in general, so I'm actually going to, it's a little bit too, hold on, let me, there we go, that's much better. So now we're gonna go in, get a darker, and we're gonna just add in the shadow. Oh yes, sorry. Make sure it's alpha locked. We'll un-alpha lock it in a little bit, but just to make sure. That way you can just stay inside those shapes very easily. We're gonna go in and just add those darker lines. And as you can see, there's still little poofs kind of in the back and little tufts of grass. So don't forget to go back there and add some different colors. Kind of gets a little bit darker. There's kind of like a line. You can see there's kind of like a darker line and then like a lighter line. So going in and adding that. I have a little bit of a darker color. Going in, adding that as well. So now we're going to take a color that's a little bit lighter. And we're going to go in above the darker lines that we just created. And again, you want to move fast fluid motion. And make sure that all your lines aren't going in one direction. I'm right-handed, so a lot of my lines tend to lean this way. You want to make sure that you're balancing your lines out and that they're all not moving in one direction. Some my darker colors again, and just kind of work through this part. Is probably going to be the part that takes the longest, but it's also very fun and very relaxing. So now I'm going to go in with some, there's also some green colors. So we're going to mix those in sporadically throughout the piece. Okay, and then we have those. Ooh, that is too bright, golly. It's still a little too bright. Bring it down a little bit. Adding in some lighter colors. Those are mainly going to be on the top of these little tufts. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, actually. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Yes, there we go. And it does get lighter as we go back. So let me add some lighter colors back here. Okay, so real quick, we're going to hop to the layer with the lighter blue kind of tufts. And we're going to go in with the darker color. And we're going to go in like that. I'm also going to erase the bottom a little bit to allow some of the other colors to come in from the bottom. And that way it's not a perfectly straight line. Kind of like this one already had it, so I'm just going to emphasize that a little bit. So we're still on this layer, adding in those darker colors. It's kind of a greenish tone. I definitely should have gone with the medium tones and then go into the darker tones. I don't know why I've been doing it backwards this whole time. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. I think I'm definitely shaking the camera a little bit. Try to be more steady. Now this grass layer, I'm actually going to undo the alpha lock. And now we can have a little bit more freedom with where we draw. We're not bound to just this. But I am going to add in some darker parts on the bottom. Actually, one thing that's going to help us out a lot that I'll just go ahead and do now, if we go down to our kind of like dirt sand layer, again, still on alpha lock, still on Blackburn. We will use other brushes, I do promise. And we're going to add in some darker shadows. So the parts where it's darker like this, we're gonna go in on the bottoms and add some shadows. Yeah, it's already making a huge difference. And I'm trying to drawing lightly and kind of on an angle to get a lot of that really nice texture. Because it is like a sandy dirt. So we want to have that grit just really shown through. And some lighter tones as well. Nice, looking good. Still add some darker tones over here. That was my dog exhaling. Say what I was doing, but I did just add some harsher dark lines and some dots. So you can see there's like a stick right over here and some other debris. So I'm just kind of was going in and adding a few of those darker parts to really add some character to it. Okay, nice. So let's go back to our grass layer. Zoom in. And I'm still gonna go in and add some lighter tones. Make it a little bit lighter. Again, just going in, adding a lot of different scribbly lines, trying to carve out different shapes. Okay, so we are at the point where I'm going to go in. I'm going to turn off our sketch layer. We should have something that kind of looks like this. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to add, well actually real quick before I go in and add the texture and the detail, I'm going to click on the moon. And then I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because it's a little big. Make it a little bit smaller. Happy with that. And then I'm going to color select the lightest part of the moon. And the darker part, the dark side of the moon. Dark side of the moon, your moon. I'm actually gonna make it a little bit darker. And then I'm going to, so I have my blending brush. I'm just gonna kind of, I don't know what's going on, hold on. Gonna loosely blend it out so we have something that looks like that. Yeah, nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a layer, and I'm going to, it's just gonna be like my texture layer. If you want, you can add a separate layer on top of each of these layers, and then when you add the texture, it'll be directly on it. Or you can do it all in one layer. I'm just gonna do it in one layer. So now I'm going to go into, I have my lines brush, and I'm going to hop over to the grass, and I'm going to just take a few different colors, make sure the opacity is all the way up, and get it a good size. I'm gonna turn my opacity down actually. And then I'm going to just add in some of these nice lines, just like sporadically through the piece. Just make some of them bigger, make some of them smaller. It's gonna make them a little bit more vibrant with more color. Again, with some of the darker colors as well. Some smaller lines. Okay, so now I'm going to go in to the rock, not to be confused with Dwayne, and I'm going to add some of these lines here as well. And just kind of going over what I had drawn before, but adding more texture. Okay, so now I'm going to take my dots scattered brush, and I'm going to go in. For this one, I actually am going to go down to the sand layer, and I'm going to add the dots there because I want the dots to only appear on the sand to add more texture. I'm just going to my brush a little bit smaller. Just add some of these scattered dots. Make them a little bit bigger. Maybe a little bit too big. And then I'm going to add some lighter tones. Nice. And then I'm going to go back on my top layer. I'm going to add a few of these dots here. And I'm also going to go on here and add some of the dots in the sky as well. And now I'm going to go in, with my Inka brush. It's kind of like a smaller version of the Blackburn brush we used for smaller details. So I'm just going to go in and just kind of scribble in some more details. Oh, real quick. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, on top of all of this, have a layer, and I'm going to add in my textured photo. I will link this photo down below. I'm going to use a rest photo. Okay, so I've just imported this photo, which I'm going to place on top of my entire painting. And I'm going to turn the opacity down and bring it to overlay. So you can see it adds a really nice texture to all of it. It's a bit too much for me right now though, so I'm going to bring this down. So here's it with 0, 100%. We don't want that. We want to find someplace kind of probably around the teens. So maybe like 11%. I'm actually gonna distort it a little bit. So we have something else like this. So we already have a lot of texture, and there's just more of that grit to the entire piece so far, which I really love. So what else do I need to do? I might add some more dots actually. So let me go into my scatter dots and go down to this layer. And I'm going to add some dots over. Oh, way too big. Sorry, one of my neighbor's car's alarm. Their car alarm just went off. So I'm just gonna add some more dots on this rock. And the opacity down a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this light green color that's in front of the rock, and I'm using my Inka brush right there, and I'm just going to add some greenery. Sorry, my dog. I'm going to add some greenery in front of the rock formation. Okay, I'm really happy with how this is turning out. So the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another layer, and then I have my custom stamp that I had, that I created for my name, Ashley Newell. So I'm going to select a color, and I actually have a video on how to create custom stamps. So that way you can create a really nice looking signature, and you don't have to draw it out every single time. You can just stamp it. So I'm going to stamp this right over here, stamp right there. I'm now going to make the background color white. Hopefully it doesn't blow out on my camera. Okay, and then I'm going to crop. So I'm going to hide that. Crop up my screen. Click done. And there you have it. This is the final piece. I hope you guys had a wonderful time creating this with me. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions for future videos, please comment that down below and I'll make sure to get to those. Thank you all so much. Have a great day. God bless.